Hi all and welcome to another episode of An Evening with Thomas. My name is Thomas Williams and we've got a new guest on today and I think this should be a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun on the page and he's a lot of fun to talk to. And today's guest is Glenn Connon and he's going to talk us through his life. And he's kind of experienced a vast range of things in his life, different countries, different states, different jobs, and different lifestyles, which has all been done in his own unique way with an air and the confidence of an extrovert, but also with the heart of an introvert. We will hear much today about his wild swings of life he's experienced and how he's all brought it back to balance, where it all leads to, and where he's at now. Now, Glenn will be with us shortly after his first music choice tonight, which is Metallica and Master of Puppets. Hi all and welcome to another evening with Thomas, and tonight's guest is Glenn Connon, and this should be a good laugh. And these are for those of you who are new. I know we've got a lot of new members. These shows are designed for the people to build their own show, tell their own life story, and they choose the topics and they choose the music, and it's all about them. You know, for too long in the alternative community, we've been shut down by friends, family, and neighbours, and even from group to group. And it's time, I felt, that everyone should have a voice. You know, it's not all about me, and it's not all about anybody else for that matter. It's all about all of us. So I look forward to today's show, and we're going to introduce Glenn now. And Glenn's got an announcement today because I believe it's somebody's birthday today, Glenn. Hi, Glenn.
Imagine that. Yeah. Well, I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, happy birthday, Dave. Dave Beyond Golf. So just a little giggles for you. So this was on request, so here you go, Dave. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dave. Happy birthday to you. Yeah. Shoot some guns.
Hope you're all paying attention now. So that was
ammunition close by and guns oiled up and everything ready to go. Because 2 weeks we'll be at the White House taking over everything. So how's it going there, Thomas?
I've just had a nervous breakdown as I thought it was on the show with Drake again.
Oh, there's the door. Anyway.
So were you in Vietnam, Glenn?
Well, I remember something about being somewhere in the Conquai jungle, but that was with 3 Asian girls, so maybe I wasn't in Vietnam. No. But I can't tell those stories. That's terrible.
No. Yeah. No. Right.
No Vietnam for me, no military service.
Oh, well.
So
no damage then. not more
than. Well, I wouldn't say that. No, right. There's enough damage to go around. I'm going to share some baggage today, so
yeah.
Hopefully it's cathartic.
Yes, I'm sure it will be. You started off life as a young child, same as us all.
Most of us do.
Yeah. And you didn't feel like you fitted in and everyone else around you was not the same or different. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in northern Jersey, which is like a demilitarized zone of America, and everybody's at war with each other, and neighbors fighting neighbors, and family fighting family, and churchgoers fighting fellow churchgoers, and it's a bunch of crazy stuff, and it's a fast-paced lifestyle with a lot of BS, interpersonal BS. And I never fit in, even as a little kid. I remember, I don't know, I was probably about 3 or 4 years old, and we got a neighbor that moved in across the street from us, a new kid. And I remember going up to him to try and make friends with him. Next thing I know, I get hit over the head with a baseball bat. So, you know, at a young age, I was like, I was just going to make friends. I don't know what happened. And that's kind of been the motto of my life, meeting new people and finding out that they're hostile and combative. And that wasn't me as a child. I would say I was pretty happy and enlightened, and you know, on my own I was great, but adding other children into the mix and other people into the mix, and I just didn't fit. They were always there was always an overbearing influence of fear and anxiety from everybody that I dealt with, and it changed me from that point on. And I just realized I really didn't fit in with most people, or the way people thought, or even interacted and played with each other. And I was a younger child of my family. My mother was previously married before she met my father, and my brother and sister that I knew of at that point in time were 7 and 8 years old, and I was just born. But I didn't know them, of course, at that point. Anyway, and then I come to later find out I had another brother that was 4 years older than that. He was kept hidden from me until I was 14 years old, even though I'd met him a few times and I was told he was my cousin. So, which, you know, it's kind of weird, but I'm sure other people have similar stories and situations with being adopted and whatnot. It was just, but I never even fit in with them. So, but the age gap lent to that disadvantage as well. So that's kind of how it goes.
And then you kind of went on from there, realizing people kind of violent in a way. It's kind of a massive awakening into life. There's always a baseball bat round the corner, whether it's a real one or a verbal one, you know, and it's not much fun. But one of the things that I've found, you know, coming from England, is there's the people of New Jersey and New York are kind of a lot different to the rest of the Americans, so to speak. Is that something that you felt, or something you can see even now?
Oh yeah,
it's an inner anger.
World.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a different world in the tri-state area, New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey. You know, being a truck driver, I've had the pleasure or displeasure of traveling the whole country, which most of it was pleasurable. But I quickly came to find out that being from that area, you were automatically seen as an aggressive individual, and people perceived you as such and treated you as such. And through my experiences, I have found out that most of the United States, people are wonderful, generous, kind, and would go out of their way to help you. But New Jersey and New York, especially the area I grew up in, if you were bleeding in a puddle of your own blood, they'd step around you to not get their Louis Vuittons dirty. Yeah. So it's a different mindset. It's very, like I said, it's very fast paced. It's very dog eat dog, and I'm better than you, and I've got a bigger house, a faster car, a nicer boat, and this and that. You know, I've got 2 houses, 3 houses, a helicopter, crazy stuff. You know, and I grew up in basically a blue collar suburb, which was 10 minutes outside of Manhattan, and it was like a paradise. You know, to a young kid, there was so much stuff to do, and playgrounds and schools and all that stuff. Everything was at your fingertips. And just a few years later, I came to find out on a school trip that we lived right next to the city of Newark, which is literally the armpit of New Jersey, and it's just a cesspool of violence and anger and hatred, and they keep the people over there, the city or the powers that be, set up these housing projects, and the whole place just felt like a prison, and it was so dirty and nasty, and that was my first inkling that there's something wrong in Kansas.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I remember when I was coming on vacation to America, and the first time I came over, I flew into Maine, and then I've flown into Chicago. I'm thinking, ooh, this is a bit scary, and and Philadelphia was okayish. It reminded me very much of the UK, the industry and whatnot. But then every time, there'd be certain times I'd fly straight to Florida, and there's like a vast difference where everything looks clean and palm trees and everything. And then I flew into Newark. And I thought, oh my God, the residents here.
It's a third world country.
It doesn't feel too good here. And I was initially I thought, oh my God, they delayed the plane. I thought, oh my God, I don't want to spend too many hours here. It looks rough, but that sometimes perceptions, as you see it, can be wrong. But someone living there feeling the same way, then it's that wrong world again. I keep going on about on the Thursday shows, this comparative mindset and how they can get whole regions to do the same thing, and they're all fighting each other, and in the end there's no escape from it, and then it becomes part of your own essence, and only the ones that look at themselves and step back and do the shadow sides and do the inner work can they step out of that what's basically a program. You mentioned better houses, more houses, I'm having a helicopter, I'm going to this square and Times Square and all this lot. And in the end, all we're doing is hurting each other.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody in that area throughout my childhood and young adult life bought into that paradigm and that program, and they fought it with, they fought to keep that style of life by tooth and nail, and they loved it. And it was like, oh, I got to wait till I show my friends what I got, so they'll be jealous. Yeah. It just never made sense to me. Although by the end, I bought into it.
Yeah, I think we all do to a point.
Yeah.
No one's.
I did the big house and the big, cars and boats and all that stuff, and all it did, like you, a grist mill. It was just a yoke around my neck to keep me working as hard as I worked. So it's very detrimental to your soul.
Yeah, absolutely. So was it the age of 4, you went to Scotland? You met your grandmother.
Yeah.
For the first time.
Yep. Yeah, I went over there at the age of 4. I remember we left. I remember so much of it. It's crazy. A 4-year-old child, you usually forget that stuff. But we flew over there, and I remember throwing up on the plane a couple of times. And then we got there, and it was freezing cold. And it was summer. It was August. We were going over to celebrate my 4th birthday. And it was just freezing cold. My parents scrambled to get me a warm parka to ride home in to my grandparents' house. And my dad forgot where they lived. He hadn't been over there for 15 years. So he forgot where he was going. And then everybody in the car, my brother and sister and myself and my mom, were all screaming because he was driving on the wrong side of the road, which apparently over there is the right side of the road. So that argument lasted for quite a while. But we finally made it to Grandma and Granddad's house over the river and through the woods and through the North Sea we went. So, that was my first excursion overseas, and it was pretty interesting. I remember quite a bit about it. I remember the first time I encountered the whole Babylon money magic system, and I went into a store and I decided I wanted a set of bagpipes. I had, of course, wandered off by myself because, mom and dad weren't helicopter parents, thank God. And it was just the shop next door. I walked in, I saw the bagpipes. I was like, oh, I want those. And I picked them up and I started leaving. Well, the shopkeeper starts yelling at me, where are you going? Where are you stealing my bagpipes for? These crazy wee ones. and I couldn't understand. And my mom comes running in the store. What are you doing? I was like, I wanted these bagpipes. Well, what were you going to pay for them with? I was like, I said thank you and smiled. And no, that's not how things work.
Oh, no.
They explained the whole process of money to me, and my mind just exploded. I was like, well, we got to pay for everything? So I was like, I thought food was free and cars were free, and every time I walked into the store, I picked something off the shelves. I was spoiled, of course, father's only child. And I'd pick something off the shelf, I'd put it in the cart, next thing I know, I'd be playing with it. I didn't know there was a transaction involved. Yeah. So that pretty much started the end of my life of happiness. So, not that I'm unhappy. It's just, it was very surprising. So
the innocence of youth, so to speak, that even applies as people get older. I remember my eldest son, we used to call him financially challenged because he had his own world of economics, as most late teens do. They seem to think lots of things just fall off trees, like money. And
well, if you were from Jersey, it fell off.
Yeah. The same back in Liverpool when I was brought up. And he got his first house, and then he said, I've got a water bill. You've got to pay for water. I went, So it's not just 4 years of age. He was near 20, well, slightly over 20, and he thinks water was free because it just comes out the tap. No, nothing's free in life.
Well, he had 16 years more delusion than I did. God bless him.
Yeah, and you've got to pay property taxes. What are they for? Yeah. Well, now you're realising what I had to pay, how much I had to pay for. He has, like I said, he has his own world of economics, and he thinks because we got paid $1,000 for that job, that's $1,000 profit. No, who pays for the truck and the insurance and the phones and the gas and the paint and no comprende,
Yeah, it's a cruel deception to play on children. So, but after that, my father decided that it would be a good idea to give me an allowance and teach me how to manage my money. So at the age of 4.5 or 5, that's when it would have been 4.5 after my next year of schooling, that he says, you're going to get an allowance and you're going to learn that everything costs money. I'd pay 25 cents for rent every month and this and that and the other thing. And by the time I got my allowance, I had $5 left for the rest of the month, which was, I guess, the idea.
Yeah.
And he taught me how to save money and all that stuff. So that was good. I mean, at least I got a grasp of the concept, but it still was terrible for the rest of my life. It still is. Things must be free. I should walk into the Cadillac dealership. I need that car. There we go.
But,
there we go with the, bigger, better, faster.
That's a good, I've not heard of that before. It's a good lesson, because the problem with the ex-wife is she mollycoddles, as we would call it, helicopter parent, with him, and he ended up with no idea of looking after himself. And the eldest son, with his own world of economics, was similar, because they had no idea of the costs of life and what it all entails. You can understand it at a young age, but like I've said, you have to teach them lessons. You have to, they get to 21, they have to pay rent, because if they were not living here, they would certainly have to pay a lot more if they went and got their own apartments or their own house. I said, you're teaching them life lessons. No.
Yeah.
And so at least yours, while some people will see that as being rather harsh for a young child, to me it's a life lesson, because then you realise you're going into the real life at a younger age. And so when you get to 18 and want to be personally responsible for yourself, and you don't want to be with parents, and I want to make my own world and way in life, suddenly you know that you have to pay for everything.
Which is why I still live at home with Mom.
Yeah, Mum's bank.
Yeah, well, no, not quite. It's more like Glenn's bank, but
yeah, that's good.
Things happen. I knew at an early age also that I was going to be the one out of all of us that ended up taking care of Mom. I just had an inner knowing she was whooping my butt for something at some point in time that I did wrong, which I probably did. And I said to her, before you hit me with that spoon again, remember that I'm probably going to be the one that's taking care of you. I was probably at the age of 14. And she's like, I don't give a crap. And she just kept going. So. But I remind her of it quite often. I think at least once a week. I rub that salt into the wound a little bit. But it's with love, Jersey love. So.
Yes. So, the gist I got, we've spoken, and I can pick up on certain things for comments on the page and whatnot, is you were highly intelligent for your age. That poses a lot of difficulties, doesn't it, at that age? How did you experience it?
Well, at first everybody just thought that I was, there was something not quite right with me, that I was a little developmentally challenged as far as, people thought I was making things up. And I don't know, just as far as even just nursery school or whatever, I was always trying to figure out how to fix things or take things apart and put them back together. And I was always confrontational with anybody that told me how to do something a certain way, and I would say it was wrong or whatever. That was at a very young age, but that continued on into elementary school, where I just, the math they were teaching, the spelling, oh my God, the spelling, and the and English and all this stuff. I'm like, I already know how to do all this. Yeah. I was like, why do we need further lessons on it? And most of the times I didn't even agree with the way that it was being taught. I'm like, that's confusing. If you take 1 from 2, it's 1, and it was just, there was a lot of convoluted theories and stuff they were teaching us. It was a new type of schooling they were doing in New Jersey when I was a kid, and I was very combative and fought against it. And I refused to do my homework. I refused to do reading. I had a tactile issue with paper and print. Also factory type problems with the smell of ink, and I just refused to do all of it. I said, I don't need it. And they would give us tests, and I would get A's on everything all the time. And this went on until about 3rd grade, when they decided they were going to label me as dyslexic with oppositional defiance disorder. And I think there was another thing. I don't remember what it is now.
Basically, you were challenging the system. I think that
right.
This is a common theme. This is why I brought it up, because I've just listened to you explain my childhood and my school, and so I know some of the ones that we've had on these shows. Paul said the same thing. Some of the other show hosts I've spoken to and people in the community, it's all the same common theme, where they have a higher level of intelligence than most other children. They have thought processes that are completely different, and it creates a set of problems where most, like myself, go introverted and go into the shell and are frightened to speak, but you kind of unique in that way, is that you came out the shell and went on an extrovert path, which is completely different to most others that have gone through this. Looking back now, did you think that was the beneficial way for you to go, or perhaps you felt you might have been better, more introverted,
Well, I think about it now, and looking back, I've had such a happy life for the most part, being an extrovert and being able to get along. I was having trouble getting along with kids from the time I went to daycare to third grade, and my brother and sister kind of took me under their wing, and they taught me how to, basically fit in with the crowd and be a normal kid as they saw. And they gave me this mask to wear, and you pretend to be this person in order to get friends and to get along with teachers. And it was it was something else. And I was like, well, I can change this mask to fit in with anybody or any situation, and I don't have to have conflict or anything else, but I'm playing a part, as they told me. So I developed all of these wonderful little characters to get along with my classmates and to get along with teachers and to get along with the kids at my church, which were a higher economic class than what I was going to school with. So, and I just learned to become this chameleon. And in doing so, I developed a unique personality with, a lot of comedic edge to it, but also a lot of intelligence and understanding of a vast array of personalities and situations and economic status and all of that. And I wore that mask every day of my life from that point on until I was about 21. So it basically taught me how to be a con man, because I was never really myself.
Yeah.
And it was advantageous to me in the fact that I could get and do whatever I wanted to do because I fit into every situation. Yeah. And I was able to experience a vast difference between cultural and economical and stereotypical borders.
Yeah.
So I got to enjoy life a lot more than I think I would have if I pulled myself inward and became a recluse, and which is kind of where I am now, believe it or not. And I've pretty much withdrawn from society because I have a lot of, like everybody else, some trust issues and don't really like most of the people I'm walking next to because they don't respect themselves, they don't respect me, and they don't respect
anything.
Our planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, you were kind of pushed. Do you want your opinion on this? Do you feel that you were pushed into wearing what is basically what I've spoken about on the show is the mask of illusion? Anything that made you then fit in, and do you think it was their way of trying to pull you out of your world and back into theirs?
Well, I think what happened was I was getting in a lot of fights at school, and I was always taught to stand up for myself, so I did. And at one point, my father said to me, he says, "Look, if you get in one more fight in school," he goes, "I'm going to, tear you a new a-hole." So I was like, okay. So I stopped fighting, and then I was coming home beat up. And that's when my brother and sister kind of took me and taught me how to wear this mask of illusion. And at that point, my father said, "No, you're going to karate." And I was like, "But you just told me I can't fight." He goes, "You can't control yourself." Yeah. So I know a sensei that I'm very good friends with, and he will teach you self-control, and he will teach you how to defend yourself without hurting people. So I I went to karate class with some kid that lived around the block from me that was getting his butt beat at the Catholic school, and our parents were friends, so we both went together, and that was another part of the arsenal of the Mask of Illusion. I became quite adept at almost all martial arts. I had a thirst for it that couldn't be quenched. Within the first year of karate, I was already a yellow belt, which was a pretty big deal for a kid that was like 7 years old.
Cool.
And the next thing I knew, I was a black belt at 10, and I just went after every other martial art I could find. And I loved it, and I loved the competition, and I loved the respect, because the classes where I was in taught you self-control, and taught you honor and respect and humility and how to get along in life just through a silly exercise called karate. You know, and all the martial arts are self-discipline and learning how to quiet and still your mind. And I'm fortunate that I had a teacher that was just as adept at the physical and physicality of martial arts as well as the mental discipline, which was the most important thing for me. And that helped me get along a lot better in life and taught me self-control. So it was very beneficial.
Yeah, so that probably, I've never been one for violence. I did get into scrapes at school, but I never saw the point of it. Was both get hurt, and it's all about pride at the end of the day when you overview it. But one of the things that you just mentioned, it's about channeling aggression and learning control. And one of the things that really bothers me is the military and how they basically crush all your control, and they control you. So in other words, the military become like human robots. We think for you, we act for you, and you will follow orders. Is martial arts perhaps something that the military going forward, although I'm hoping going forward we won't need militaries for wars and all that unnecessary nonsense, but would you recommend that training would be more beneficial than soldiers than run them into the ground, drug them up and mind control?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you were to teach that particular mindset of self-control and discipline, and you only strike someone in self-defense, and even at that point, striking them to hurt them, you're striking to control their physical response and to limit the injuries you take and to try to not injure the other party. Because as someone that's studied in the martial arts, if someone attacks you, 9 out of 10 times, probably way more than that, I can disassemble the human body very quickly, and most people that are adept at martial arts can do that. Yeah. Now, you don't hear about martial artists going crazy and attacking a school or attacking a bunch of people in an office or something like that, because they have a mindset that even when they're attacked, I know that I can hurt that other person or kill them just because I have the skill. But my main objective is to stop them from hurting me and to stop themselves from me hurting them.
Yeah.
like you would control a petulant child. You would put him at a pick and a therapeutic hold, and you would hold him until he calmed down.
Yeah.
You know, in regards to the military, hopefully, like you said, there's no need for that going forward, because I'm pretty sure most of the people I've ever encountered in this life all say that they don't want a war and they don't want to be at war with this country or that country or the next country. It's all, brought about by the banks and manipulation of currency, and let's get this country in debt so we own that, and get that country in debt so we own them, and get them to go to war so they destroy everything we don't like.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
Absolutely.
So, but I think the physicality of martial arts is a great benefit to a human being, just because exercise is just as much nourishment for the soul as thought and meditation.
Yeah.
You need to use this vessel in order to get the most out of it. So,
something else that just came to me. Did you find it easier to do meditation because of the martial arts training?
No.
No.
I have never, up until the last few years, I have not been able to quiet my mind enough to quiet the chatter and to stop that monkey mind from yelling at me.
Yes.
I've always had a mind that was racing. I was solving problems 24/7, unless I was running from the night terrors that I had as a child, which were abhorrent, to say the least.
Yeah.
I've just never found that inner peace. And, meeting all the people on THI and even Cosmic Voice and Universal Voice for that matter, it all started me down a path to find that quiet space in my mind. And I owe that to everybody listening. I owe that to you, Chloe, and I can't be thankful enough or show enough gratitude for the ability to quiet my mind down.
Good.
So,
So, given you introduced, came onto the show singing, you have a father who's a singer and an actor in Scotland.
Yeah.
Was he good at it? Successful?
He could have been very successful at it in Scotland, but he had a dream of coming to America, and he was an apprentice baker in Scotland while he was singing and acting over there. And he just wanted to come to America and be a baker, and he was hoping to get a job, singing in a choir or something to that effect. He kind of wanted to do something like the Lawrence Welk show or whatever. And he came over to this country in the 50s, I think. I want to say 50s. Nope. Yeah, late 50s. He came over, and he started working for a bakery in Kearney, and he liked it, and he was making good money, and he never, I guess he never had the confidence to go and pursue his dreams of singing and acting, and he fell into a church and became a very poignant part of the choir, and he was their lead soloist, where he also met his friend, Sir Walter Reinhold, knighted by Her Majesty, and they became best buds, and he sang in their church, and he sang at NYU a few times, and he sung for plenty of the Sinatras and people like that. They've come to the church just to hear him sing for Christmas Eve or Easter services and stuff, and would leave $10,000 in a collection jar. So, that was enough for him, and he was happy with his life. So he just never pursued it, because he met my mother. My mother had 3 kids, and he was a very kind and giving person. He just said, well, you shouldn't go through life with 3 kids and no husband, and he asked her to marry her, and I miraculously came about. So
Good.
that's pretty much where he stayed until he started his own bakery. His sister-in-law embezzled every cent he had. He was going to get arrested. One day, and my mother took her divorce settlement and bailed him out from the IRS and paid all the back debt. And that they basically lost the bakery at that point, and he started working for Anheuser-Busch. That all happened by the time I was 6 years old, I guess. So a lot of family love.
Yeah. So you mentioned briefly before about night terrors and sleep paralyzation. Can you talk us a bit through that? It must have been difficult.
Sure.
It is. It's not. Must have been. It is difficult at that age. And how do you approach your parents? Did you approach your parents?
I probably told them what was going on, but parents of the day were just like, "Oh, they're just nightmares. You'll grow out of it. And there's nothing to be afraid of. And look under your bed. There's nothing there. And come in and read you a story." Or tell you a story about something or other to help sleep. And, I don't think I realized at that point how bad it was, because it got to the point where it was normal for me. I would go to bed, whatever time they put me to bed, and I would go to sleep, and I remember a lot of the times waking up and couldn't move my arms, couldn't move my legs, I couldn't talk. I could move my eyes, but I couldn't move anything. My head, nothing. I was just stuck there. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't move. And that happened quite a bit. But after that started happening, I would have these crazy night terrors where the repetitive one was, there used to be a cartoon. I should have looked this up before the show. There used to be a cartoon back in the 80s where there was vehicles that were biomechanical vehicles. They were like plant-based vehicles with saws and reciprocating blades and all sorts of stuff coming out of the wheels and spikes and thorns. And they used to chase me through my dreams till I got to a doorway. And the doorway was like the church of a cathedral. Mm-hmm. And I would open up the doorway of the cathedral to go in and get away from these vehicles that were chasing me. And the debauchery that went on inside that place, I just remember it was always black, and there was always goo all over the floor, like black sticky goo. And it was like hell, like my interpretation of hell from being a child of the church. And I would black out at that point, and then I wouldn't remember anything, and I would wake up with the paralyzation. And it happened at least 4 or 5 times a week for a good couple of years. And I tried to convey it to my parents, like, "Oh, you're just being silly." And it continued like that for a long time.
That's
and
one of
after I started going. Sorry.
That's one of the realms, by the way.
Oh, right. Okay. And after I started doing the martial arts, with the mindfulness and controlling your emotions and learning your inner power and learning to harness chi, which is something they taught me very, very young, and I was good at it, which still confuses me why it took me forever to quiet my mind. But anyway, I was able to harness my chi and learn my inner strength. And by the time that I became very good at martial arts, I was able to fight in my dreams, and I was able to win, and I was able to manifest myself as a bigger, stronger, more knowledgeable individual in my dreams, and just stop these vehicles at will and literally take them apart with my hands, in my dreams, of course. And then I never had to go to that door anymore. I never had to go to that cathedral door because I was able to circumvent that through taking care of those things in the astral.
Yeah.
Before I got sucked further in. And that's when I started. My dreams changed from the cathedral doors to kind of like alien abduction scenarios. I know I didn't mention anything to you about that. I wasn't going to mention it at all.
It's your choice.
Yeah, but I would wake up finding myself standing outside of my house naked in the middle of the night outside my bedroom window. That happened probably maybe a handful of times, maybe 4 or 5 times. And then after that, I would still have those dreams, but I would always wake up in my bed. I'd go to bed in pajamas, but I'd wake up naked, and I'd wake up usually very cold. And during the summer, I'd be sweaty. We had a house with central heat and air conditioning, fireplace, never wanted for heat or warmth or coolness or anything. So it was just bizarre. And also during that time, I developed a weird habit of I was afraid to leave the threshold of my bedroom. So I would pee in containers if I had to wake up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom, which was kind of weird. But my parents thought nothing of it. They just yelled at me to stop it.
It's the door. The key was the door.
Yeah.
And and a lot of people, you go, not so much now, but you go back 10 years ago and you're explaining this to people, or even 5, and automatically the trigger comes in. These people are not right in the head, and yet when you break, it's not a nice way to say it, when you get more familiar with different people over a wide range of either countries or different states, and you get close and talking to them, every one of them has gone through something similar. They just don't want to talk about it. And this is the beauty of THI and these shows, is you're releasing the baggage of it, because you're holding on to that fear. As a young kid, suddenly there's demons and all kinds of other things, and you're just told, no, it's just your imagination. Well, you can't imagine something that doesn't exist. It's not possible. So
right.
If you imagine something, if you imagine something, then you've seen it, whether it's this lifetime or previous. You have seen that entity or that theatre or that realm. We had, I can't remember which one it was. It was Patrick or Eric, and he described one of his dreams, and that was another realm. There's the circus realm, the tricksters with the mirrors, and the things that as you evolve on a personal level, as you go up your own evolutionary growth, you learn to be able to sidestep those realms and go to where you need to go. And so people don't have to be stuck in the lower astral all the time with all the demons and the various entities that are Lucian energy and trying to take you out and soul harvest you, and etc., etc. Once you've gone beyond that, suddenly you're not experiencing them. And the reason is because you've gone beyond that plane. You don't have to be there again. Unless you kill somebody, then your karma is if you're on the higher astral or the first mental plane, you're dropping into the lower astral again. And this is part of the ongoing problem we've had on this planet, is too many people are stuck in the trauma of the lower astral layer.
Right, and that's another reason for war.
Yeah.
keep regenerating and refilling that lower astral. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. No, absolutely, it's correct. That's why them, not us, them create all these wars.
Keep filling their playgrounds with toys.
Yeah, and this is why. This is why they've had the increase on a bigger picture scale. This is why they were desperate to push for World War III, because particularly over the last 5 or 6 years, the lower astral, has been decimated. Absolutely decimated. So they need to keep that program in place, and the only way they can do it is mass casualties.
Well, they certainly want to try, but I've been busy in that lower astral in the dream time. I go in there to clean up. I got a lot of scores to settle, but it's easy for me to go in and out now. So it's almost like a calling. Like I get the ringing and pressure in my ears. Towards the end of the night, and I know it's going to be a busy night that night, and I wake up and I can't remember a damn thing. But that's something that happened as a child too. Is I used to be able to remember these dreams, and right around the age of I guess 12 or 13, somewhere in there, I stopped being able to remember. But that's also when I started to discover alcohol. So that might play
Yes, you dance with the spirits. In the awake time.
In the awake time, in the dream time.
Yeah, it's what is awake, what is dream, and this is part of the main things. For the benefit of people who are new to this show, I'd just like to make a point where we're talking about lower astral, and most of the regular members are now familiar with it, but there's still new ones that have joined. Maybe you don't think you've been to the lower astral, and you've woken up in a lather of sweat and struggling to breathe and can't open your eyes. That's where you were. But you came through it, and that's the important thing. There's a lot of things that have happened to all of us at a young age that we can't explain, we don't understand, and even now we're still learning and struggling to understand it. But shows like this and many others are now bringing this out into the open, where people can be more confident with it to speak out, because otherwise, you mentioned about the doors and frightened of going out of the bedroom. That's a mind replay. You're basically pushing yourself back in time to that trauma you were facing and that fear you're facing, and you're holding on to it. And the key of doing the shadow sides and facing those things and walking through the door is releasing them all. And that's the essence, really.
Yeah. It was hard to deal with as a kid. But it was always pushed aside, and you're just having nightmares and you're being silly. And listen to your children, people. Listen to them, because they know more than you think they do, because they're very heavily connected to the higher planes and lower astral if they're having nightmares.
They haven't been programmed yet. The program of silence. Don't talk about that. Don't shut up. You're talking stupid. You're being silly. And that type of thinking is nutty, or you've got ADHD, etc., etc. All the programs and the labels they bring out to shut you down from accepting that as being real, because it is. They know that, and they're desperate to keep us all in the dark. But what we're doing now is bringing a lot of it into the light, and it's releasing a lot of people that they're able to speak about it. most people have held on to it all their lives. It was they're frightened of telling their friends or their partner, well, I woke up and there was a grey in my bed. It's not easy.
Yeah. No, it's not.
Well, are we for time? We're probably just about right talking about doors. We're going to play your second song tonight, and it's all about doors. 3 of them. 3 doors down. We'll be back with more from Glenn soon. Hi all, and welcome back to An Evening with Thomas, and today's guest is Glenn Connon, and we're going to hear more of Glenn's story now. I just thought of something we were just mentioning about certain realms, and that's one of them. And this is, I mentioned the circus realm. This is kind of why there's a lot of children who don't like or fear clowns. So that should tell a lot of people that it's real. And, it doesn't really make sense. Suddenly you'd have a fear of something when there's no apparent fear to be perceived. But that's why. The old circus realm and the clowns. Is that Drake again?
Yeah. I just found my squeaky door there. Yeah. I don't know what this show is you're doing, Thomas, but it's not getting to the meat of the head. Yeah. Get your guns.
No, I had to do the squeaky chair bit, and I don't have a squeaky door. So I'm going to do squeaky chair bit. We did that. Now I'm going to go downstairs, make some noise, clang and bang, shut the microwave a little bit. I don't know. See what happens. So just playing it by ear.
Yeah.
What's going on here? There's the microwave.
Yeah.
Okay. You can't get it beeping there. It's beeping.
Yeah.
All right. We good. Got the microwave beeping. I got to cover my bases.
Yeah.
So it's time for a cigarette. I didn't have time yet. Can you make me some coffee, Chloe?
Yeah. Glenn wants some coffee.
No, we can continue talking. I'm just going to get out my trusty little lighter here.
Yeah.
Cigarette. Oh, this chair squeaks too. Sorry, guys. I hope it doesn't annoy you out there in radio land.
All right. Get outside and have me a beer and a smoke. And there we go.
Now that's a proper.
That's a cigar.
Yeah, that's a proper light.
Yeah, little sideshow just to break up the monotony. Yeah. So it's kind of how I do things with my mask and whatnot. So
yes. So what is the mask, and how can I stop it from changing faces? And your siblings helped you a lot. And until you discovered the dark side of the Force, and you got into your adolescence and teenage years. How did that all go?
The dark side of the Force. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm a good writer when I think about it. Anyway, pat myself on the back. You told us not to, hide our talents. So,
exactly.
Well, dark side of the Force started when I actually started making my own friends, and I lived across the street from this kid, Chris. And we were afraid of each other until we were about 12 years old. So we ended up talking to each other. Oh, I remember what happened. Sorry. Around the age of 12 and a half, I went and got a job, started working for a hardware store where my brother started working. And I discovered that money was a great thing, and I was going to save up all the money I made at the hardware store to buy DJ equipment because I loved music, and I was sick of singing opera and church hymnals and all that stuff, and I just wanted to play dance music like I heard on the radio all the time. Yeah. Because back then in city, the clubs would play live feeds of their DJs at night on the radio stations. So you got to hear them mix the music together, and it was a seamless flow of energy, and I just loved it. So in order to buy this thousands of dollars worth of equipment, I needed a job. So as soon as I could get my working papers, I got my working papers, started working at the hardware store for the old lady that my brother worked for. He probably stopped working there about a year or so before I started because he was so much older. And I worked there for a while, and the woman kept accusing me of stealing money from the register. Come to find out, her son, the owner of, or manager of the hardware store that she owned, was a heroin addict. And he would come in and he would steal money out of the register, and I never realized it was stealing. I was still pretty naive as a kid at that point. And I didn't recognize it as stealing. It's his store. He takes money out of the register. That's what he does. Well, I was getting accused of taking that money. So I devised a little plan and borrowed a friend's camcorder with a remote control, and every time he went to the register, I'd record it. And I showed that to the lady, and she said that that was phony and her son wouldn't do that. And I made the tape up, and I was like, oh, wow. By that time, I had saved enough money to buy my own equipment. So I quit, and there was a lot of turmoil in that. And it was the first time I ever wanted to hurt an individual, especially a woman, and a senior lady at that. She was probably 85. And my martial arts training kicked in and said, I'm not going to take advantage of a human being that can't defend herself, and I'm just going to deal with her crap. And so the police had to get involved, and they looked at the tapes, and sure enough, they ended up arresting her son and found a stash of, drugs and whatnot in his living quarters. And then there was a lot of bad blood there with that family because we were all friends. And, my parents and them were friends. And that dissolved that friendship. Became a DJ, or started learning how to do all that stuff. And at that point, we had discovered my dad brings home 2 cases of beer every week from work. There was like 50 cases of beer in the basement. And I met all these new friends around the neighborhood. And I still needed a job. And how I met Chris was I went up to the gas station around the corner from my house, because you could do that back then, walk around the streets without your parents hovering over you. And I applied for a job there, and that kid that was my neighbor was working there. And he's like, oh, you're the kid from the middle of the block. I'm like, yep. I was like, you live with all those Catholic people? He's like, yeah. So then we became friends very quickly, and we discovered beer in the basement and made a bunch of new friends because they liked beer or wanted to find out what it was. And then my house kind of became the secret party house because my parents went to sleep very early, and the basement was big and soundproof, and I'd have a bunch of drunken teenagers over there every weekend. So that's when I started to discover the. Oh, my cigarette went out. Pardon me. That's a good smoke. Drink time. So, anyway, where were we? Partying.
You were in the basement with a load of teenage friends.
In the basement with a load of teenage friends. Okay, so we started doing that, and then drinking thing became a normal thing for us at the age of 12 and 13. Some of us were 14. And during this time, I would DJ in the basement for my friends, and I became quite good at it. So I started DJing at local schools and dances. I even had my parents drive me to weddings and stuff like that I would do. And I became very, very good at it, and I got a job at a few local clubs in New Jersey, working teen night, because, you had to be, you couldn't be under 18 and work where they were serving alcohol. Yeah. And I met this girl nice Italian girl from a different town, quite far away from where I was. About, it was an hour and a half ride on a bicycle to get there. But she was cute, and she was really nice, and we hit it off. Well, it turns out her father was, she's an Italian girl. Her father was a Sicilian man, and he was involved in some less than legal business, let's call it.
All very good, fellas.
Well, yeah, a little bit. Get your shine box, Tommy. Anyway, I think I've been waiting forever to say that to you. Anyway, so we hit it off, and I was dating her for about a year and a half or so, and her father didn't like it. Well, it must be longer than that, because then I turned 17. Anyway, it was a while. And he figured that he didn't want me dating his daughter or marrying his daughter because I was a dirty, cheap Scotsman, and he was a wealthy Italian businessman, quote unquote, or as you would say, inverted commas, or inverted commas.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, in inverted commas, he was a businessman, and he said, well, I can get you some jobs working at the nicer nightclubs in Manhattan. I was like, but I'm not, 18. I can't work at a place that serves alcohol. He says, you don't worry about that. I was like, okay. So he pulled some connections, and I was good enough. And next thing I know, I'm working at a club called Limelight, and another one called Palladium, and another one called Webster Hall. And he used my fame and connection with those clubs once I got popular enough to traffic certain nefarious party accoutrements into these clubs. And I became friends with the owner of nightclubs. I'm not going to name. And we just started making money hand over fist with the trafficking of said party accoutrements. Yeah. And that became a very addictive lifestyle very quickly. And it went out of control to the point that it was pretty much like the end of the movie Goodfellas, looking out of my car for police officers and whatnot. And at that point, I had graduated high school. I was going to college for mechanical and electrical engineering, and a minor in physics and astrophysics. And I was going out of my mind because I was always loaded on something, whether it was alcohol or drugs or whatever. But it soothed my mind to the point that I could function and do school and do the DJing and still be a mechanic all at the same time. And I was, I was like the stereotypical version of a Jamaican in our area, which is they have 10 jobs. Yeah. And, and that's how I did it. And I just was on a alcohol or drug fueled, craze most of the time. So at that point, I decided that college wasn't working out for me because I didn't agree with the professors. They were wrong, telling me lies about mathematics and how it works and why I need to make adjustments to my calculations in order to correlate the information into a theory that is wrong because they're making me fudge the math. So I was losing my mind over that. And I had to drop out of college. So I stopped everything. And I said, I need to slow down. I need to, relax a little bit. And I took a course in electronics at a place called Retz Institute in Nutley. And I was killing it there. It was easy to me. Just basic, simple electronics, how a circuit board works, how programs work and, how to write code and all this stuff. And it was really easy to me, and I picked it up really fast. And what I'm leaving out here is all the scholastic aptitude testing that I had done, because I was such a troubled child through elementary and part of middle school, where they discovered that I had something like 161 IQ and an even higher emotional quotient that they couldn't calculate. So I was kind of, they were like, well, you're not so retarded after all, pardon my language. And, and we're going to put you in all these advanced classes. So they put me in all the advanced classes. I passed everything with flying colors. I could have graduated 2 years early as at the end of my sophomore year, but I elected to go to VOTech training, which is what they called satellite school back then. And, I took every course they had for anything mechanical. And then when I was done with that, because you have an introductory year, I decided my major was going to be truck diesel repair and mechanics. So at that point, I was like, I really don't need to take anything else. So I went to beauty culture class, where my girlfriend was working, or was taking classes. And I stayed in there and flirted for 2 semesters with every female I could get close to. And even though my girlfriend was right there, but that's okay. So, that's the way that went. And then, I was at Rets Institute, and I was just about to graduate. I think it was I want to say it was an 18-month course. And I was approached, by some people from our government to come and work for them. And they had offered me a couple of different positions and wanted me to go for testing. And I was interested. So I went for the testing and did all their scholastic stuff they wanted me to do. And, they wanted to see if I knew how to handle firearms. So I was like, yeah, I can do that. And I took the firearms aptitude thing they gave me, and it all seemed very strange because it was me and 2 other individuals. And it was like in a building, in a warehouse in Newark, in like the worst section. So it was just strange, but they all had credentials, and, there was administrators for the tests there, and there was firearms guys there and all sorts of stuff. So this went on for about a week. I think I went a total of 4 times to that facility, and about a couple of weeks goes by and they come back to speak to me and offered me a position to work for the government. But the only clause is I would have to sign a contract of non-disclosure, which they called it something different back then.
Yeah.
And that I would have to not see my family or friends probably for the next 25 years. And that was mandatory, that I had to cut all ties with family and friends. And, I could tell them I was going to work for the government, and that would be it. And then just sever all ties. And fortunately, I still had enough compassion left in me that I wanted to stay with, my father and mother and, have contact with them. Nobody else that really cared whether or not I saw them again or not. But it was because the way my father cared about me and all that stuff that I decided to not do it.
Yeah.
So within a few months of that decision where I turned them down, my life went from making obscene amounts of money for a kid my age, to making nothing and not being able to maintain a job or having all sorts of employment problems. And it was almost like they turned a switch in my head where I became completely derelict, even though I was doing all this bad stuff. And I was like, well, so a buddy of mine, he had a shop, a carburetor shop, And I started working for him, and he's like, I don't see why you're having problems, getting employment or any of this stuff. I'm like, I don't know. It's just weird. And I never made the connection back then. And I started running a shop that he had across the street, a mechanic shop there that one of his mechanics left. And so I ran his shop with my friend Chris, and we did that for a while. While I was still kind of DJing and doing other stuff, and just my life was just falling apart. And I decided I needed to leave that area before I killed myself or somebody else did it for me. And that area would be, the North Jersey area. And I kind of took off. Yep, go ahead.
I just want to, it's just even listening for the last 20 minutes, everything was going on at the same time. Looking back now, do you think you would, even ignoring the government issue, do you think you would be where you are now and the state you're in now if you'd have carried on that lifestyle?
No, I'd be dead.
No.
I would have been dead.
It's everything. The things, we've been going an hour and a half now, and throughout your life, everything's happening at a pace. You learn quickly. You became an adult really before you hadn't even gone halfway through what is perceived as childhood, and everything's job, money, girls, and it's all racing. And was it that particular incident that thought I have to take stock, or was there another incident in particular? As you mentioned, you around this time you had some near-death experiences. Was that the change?
Yeah. The first one probably was. No, the first one wasn't. I forgot about this stuff, Tommy. You're good. The first time that I had a near-death experience, I was really, really high with a bunch of friends, and I had thought that the police were walking up the driveway, and I threw everybody out the back door, and I swallowed all the stash we had in the house. Instead of flushing it down the toilet or anything else, I just swallowed it. And I died. I checked out. Simultaneous lighter.
Oops.
Yep. Oh, oops. I forgot to say oops. Oops, I did it again. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I stupidly swallowed everything, which wasn't a whole lot, but it was enough to kill you. And it wouldn't be the last time either. And I went into convulsions on my bed, thinking the cops were going to break in the door at any moment. And I remember trying to calm myself down. I drank probably about a pint and a half of vodka just to try and cut the edge off of what I swallowed, and didn't think about throwing up or doing any of that stuff, inducing vomiting. And I just laid down, and finally I stopped shaking and I went to sleep. Well, I woke up next to my bed, in between the bed, the dresser, and the wall, and the night table. The night table was smashed. The dresser was laying on top of me. I had a chipped tooth and a dislocated shoulder, and I woke up to that mess. And I went to my neighbor's house and I knocked on his window. I'm like, "Am I alive?" He's like, "Yeah, you're alive." He's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "You sure I'm alive?" He's like, "Yeah, you're alive." I was like, "Okay." So during this whole time, apparently when I went to sleep, I guess, this one's not clinically proven that that I died, but I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah.
I went to sleep. Everything went black, and all of a sudden I was floating. Like, I was aware of who I was, and I wasn't sure where I was. And dogs barking too. We got the trifecta here.
Yep.
Wasn't sure where I was, and it was dark, and I saw a point of light. And I remember saying to myself, don't go towards that point of light. Just go where you're going. And I was like, but where am I going? And something was telling me, you're going to go where you need to go. Just don't go towards that point of light. So, me being me, I was like, I want to see what's in the light. So I went to the light. And I was hearing music from the light. It was soft, it was caressing, and I felt like a familial draw to it. So I head towards the light, and I see my grandfather, and he's waving me in. And something's telling me not to go in. I go in, and I'm talking to my grandfather. He says, what did you do? He goes, do you know where you are? I'm like, no. He says, you killed yourself. I'm like, what? And I was talking to him, and I don't remember what happened. And the next thing I know, another door. I have to go down this doorway and follow this light. So I go down into this doorway, and I walk down these stairs, and everything goes pitch black. And I feel like a bunch of things coming at me, like just a feeling. I didn't hear them, I didn't see them.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear him, I didn't see him, but all of a sudden my skin felt like it was boiling, like if you have ever put your hand on hot and burnt your finger. But it felt like that all over my legs. And then it started to get lighter in there, and I was just punching and swinging and smashing whatever I could grab, and I was just ripping it apart. And then at that point, I realized I was being attacked. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen Pink Floyd, The Wall, but when the lights came on, the little things that were eating me were those little black creatures in the cartoon version of Hell and Pink Floyd, The Wall. They were all teeth with white eyes, and they were all black. There was no bone part of them, only their eye was white, and they were just eating the flesh off my bones, and I could feel all the burning and the searing and the pain. And I was kicking the living daylights out of these things. And something started speaking to me and requested me to come and join his minion and this, that, and the other thing. I can't remember the exact words. You'd think I would with such a traumatic experience, but I don't. And he was like, you need to join my army and we can rule the world together and yada, 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 a bunch of crazy sounding stuff. So I said, no, I don't want to do that. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go back to my life. And he says, I will give you the count of 10 to get out of here. If you can escape, then you can go back to your life. I was like, okay. So I started running towards where I thought the door was. And something appeared in a black shroud in front of me and grabbed hold of me and started to like weigh me down. It was like a heavy, heavy weight, which I guess is when the dresser fell on me. I don't know. So he started weighing me down, and I said, "You're him." And he's like, "Who's him?" I'm like, "You're the king of the dark," or whatever. He goes, "I am everything that you need," or something to that effect. And I was like, I'm going back to my life. He goes, you've got to the count of 10. And I was like, okay. So I beat the living crap out of that thing. And I used all my meditation from learning how to work in the astral dreams, having those nightmares as a kid. And all of a sudden it was like turbo boost or an adrenaline rush. And my skills got that much better that I was able to dissect this thing physically, take it apart, and walk out of there. At which point I went back into a room full of light, and apparently I was talking to Jesus or God or Anu or whoever, and they convinced me that if I go back to my life that I need to change my ways and I need to convince and proselytize the non-believers that Jesus is real and that God's love is real and that all this, love and light stuff in regards to religion, God, and, the Judeo-Christian way of love.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, good deal. That's what we'll do. And I woke up, like I said, in my shoulder dislocated, a chipped tooth, and walked over to my friend's house and asked him if I was alive. He was like, yep. And I was like, okay. And that's the moment that I started to change and stop doing what I was doing. And I didn't go to I started to go to AA and the programs and all that stuff, and they didn't resonate with me. They made me want to use more. And I just withdrew from that and started trying to educate my friends and teach them about, drug use is bad and you should stop drinking alcohol and all this stuff. And everybody looked at me like I had 3 heads.
How soon after was the exodus and the hi ho, it's off to being a redneck? I go and over the river and through the woods.
Yep. Anyway, that happened about 6 months later after another relapse.
Right. Okay.
Virtually the same thing happened. I was hanging out with this really good-looking girl at my apartment, and she had left. Oh no, it was her apartment, and she had left to go out and get some like soda and chips or whatever. And hang on a second. All right, I just checked on the dog. Sorry, time to go back upstairs. Oh, I got a squeaky shoe now. Every step I take. All right, can you go out to the dogs, hon? So, sorry for the brief interruption there, folks.
Yeah. So will it take you 2 weeks to get back up the stairs?
Yeah. Can you make sure someone gets those dogs in? So anyway, sorry about the interruption.
That's okay.
Busy lifestyle and all.
Yep.
No, it doesn't take 2 weeks to get upstairs. I'm up here now, opening my water. Let's see, put this.
Oop.
There we go. Spilled most of it. So, was at her house, and much the same thing happened, but there was a lot more there. And I did the same exact thing. Thought cops were coming in the door, and swallowed everything. And nobody showed up. And by the time my girlfriend came back, I was already starting to overdose. And I was like, you got to drive me to the hospital. And then I made up some cockamamie story at the hospital that somebody forced me to swallow this stuff to drive it over the bridge from Manhattan. And they started to treat me. And, they didn't start to treat me. They put me in a hospital bed. I started going into convulsions. I knew I was dying. And the doctors started to come in. And I remember hearing something go beep. And then next thing I know, everything goes black. And I'm back in this dark space again, but I'm not floating. I'm being pulled down and to the side a little bit, which was whatever. And I meet this thing that I took apart on the first near-death experience. And it tried to convince me that I needed to join forces with him and enjoy the power and the glory of working with him and manipulating mankind, and I could be an adversary for him on the surface and all this stuff. And the same thing basically ensued, where I was fighting this thing, but it was much stronger this time. And I remember hearing my grandfather's voice again during this fight to come towards the light. Comes towards the light. Don't fight him. Just come towards the light. So I fight this thing. I win again. I run towards the light because it's my grandfather's voice, and he's like, "What do you want to do?" And I said to him, I said, I can't die. Daddy would be crushed, and Mom would be crushed. And he's like, "What do you have to live for?" And then I got a vision of this girl I was dating and her young child, who fortunately wasn't there. And I was like, "That's what I have to live for." And he's like, "You need to go back and do what you spoke of before about converting people and all this stuff." And this was my grandfather telling me that. And I said, "Okay, I will." And then I woke up handcuffed to a hospital bed with both hands and legs and all this stuff. And the people at the hospital were like, "Well, you're under arrest." I'm like, "What am I under arrest for?" They're like, "They're waiting for the drugs to come out of your system." And I was like, "Oh." And then they told me about, don't you remember you said you were forced to swallow a bag of this and come over, the bridge and bring it to Manhattan and then wait for it to come out of your system. They said it must have ruptured. We pumped your stomach. We couldn't find anything, so it must be in your intestinal tract, and they're waiting for it to come out." And I was stuck there for 2 days, and I was apparently out of it for 2 days prior to that. I don't know if it was medical-induced coma or not. I just wanted to get out of there as soon as I could, and I didn't care about nothing or the bill or anything. Yeah. And I had a friend come pick me up when I was able to leave because they couldn't hold me any longer. And I packed my stuff that night, and I left. And that was over the river and through the woods to be a redneck I go. Yeah. And I never moved back to the city or went back to the city. I've been up here ever since, connected with some childhood friends that moved up here. And that's pretty much where my recovery started. Although it wasn't quite a recovery, it was just I stopped doing drugs. I still drank a little bit, but not very much. And I started to get my wits about me and sober up, and that took a long time.
It does.
I was hooked by that lifestyle and that way of living very deep. And it took me about 2 years, and I got a regular job up here working at a pipe plant, making like water mains and sewer pipe and all that stuff. I was running the night shift maintenance department, and it was like $14 an hour. It's probably the least amount of money I've ever paid. So at that point, for a full-time job, and got a place up here and kind of tried to pull myself together, which I did with great success, and cleaned up and realized that I was working in a dangerous situation that was probably more dangerous than my lifestyle, with high voltage machinery all around me and water all over the ground and wires that weren't connected or covered or protected from the water. And I got electrocuted a couple of times there and thrown through a wall from DC voltage. Oops. It was like a bead of sweat dropped off the top of my head while I was working on a DC
terminal,
DC motor for the pipe extruder, and I got hit with the voltage, and it threw me right through the break room wall, both sides of the plywood and 2x4s and everything. And at that point, I was like, well, I got to stop doing this too, because for some reason, I had a will to live. And so after getting thrown through the wall, I quit that job. They hired me back a couple of times, and I decided, well, since you guys keep wanting me to come back and I won't do anything to better myself, let me self-destruct on you guys. And it was our annual golf outing. The plant manager was there, and all, the owner and all that stuff. And I proceeded to drink a 30-pack of beer through 18 holes of golf with the promise of corn and fried chicken at the end. Corn on the cob, which is a very important point to this story. And I get to the last hole. I'm inebriated, can barely stand, but I'm still swinging because I got a good tolerance at that point. And I birdied the last hole. We went to the banquet, and I get in there, and there's no corn on the cob.
Oops.
There's not one left because we're the last players to get off the course. And I sat down right next to the plant manager, who was a friend of mine, and I was like, did you take the last piece of corn on the cob? He's like, yep. I was like, why would you do that to me? You know how I love corn on the cob. And he's like, well, those are the breaks. So I took his corn on the cob off the plate, and I ate his whole corn on the cob, and I put it back on his plate. I was like, thanks for saving it for me. And the next day, they accepted my resignation, and I never went back to that place. So...
But do you not find you said that was the lowest you'd earned, that was exactly what you needed at the time, because perhaps if you'd been earning $30 an hour or $40 an hour, that lifestyle that you were trying to escape may have tempted you because you had the funds to do it. So in essence, that kind of helped. Is that the way you see it?
Yeah, for the most part. I would say that was it. I just needed to escape and move further down the food chain, and I just didn't want to deal with people anymore. I didn't trust people, and at that point in time, I could see, after the second near-death experience, while I was sobering up, it became easier for me to read people and to read their true intentions, whether it was part of the psychosis of recovery or something that happened to me during the near-death experiences. I was granted some sort of ability to read people's true intentions, and it became harder for me to deal with people because I could see, almost like see their real thought. It would not know their thoughts, but see their thoughts, almost like through an aura or through a cloud. Like I could see darkness behind people, or I could see light behind people, but not like, like how a movie would predict it, like an angel behind someone or a dark demon behind someone. It was more of a gray or a light gray kind of cloud that enveloped them. And I still have this, and it's gotten more intense over the years. But
so in essence,
wow. Go ahead.
In essence, then you are living your own They Live movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's basically once you start seeing those things or sensing or feeling those things. It's always difficult to put into words what it is. It just is. In essence, the movie They Live, suddenly everyone looks different. And,
right.
It's almost like a journey of discovery. It's another layer of learning of whether that's real or not. and we have constant battles for people of the same ilk like ourselves. There's that constant battle of what's real and what's not, what's normal and what's not. Well, the reality is that everything is real, and there's no such thing as normal.
Right. There is no normal, not at all.
No.
And at that point in time, I just knew I needed to not work with anyone anymore. And I needed to work by myself, and I didn't want to own another mechanic shop and deal with customers or any of that stuff, because it was the people that were bad were so bad that they stunk. Yeah. Like, literally, I could smell something that was disgusting. And, that's another thing that got enhanced. My auditory and olfactory senses were enhanced greatly after the near-death experiences. I can smell stuff like my dogs smell stuff, like a mile away. Not literally a mile away, but if I walk in the house, because I have such an aversion to newspaper, and there's a newspaper in the house, I automatically know as soon as I walk in, because I can catch a whiff of it. I live in a pretty big house. It's just nuts.
Yeah.
So I became a truck driver. I was doing my own thing. And I was trying to hide from people. And I had another horrible experience where I was injured in a tractor-trailer accident, but I wasn't driving. I was getting out of my truck, and another truck driver clipped the front end of my tractor while he was maneuvering for a parking space and knocked me off of it. And I hurt the shoulder that was actually hurt previously, and another prior injury from football and motocross accident on my knee, and I was stuck in the terminal working for my trucking company as a safety supervisor. Someone that's not concerned with their own safety. So that's what I was doing in recovery after I was injured, and I met Elisa. She came in for a job at the terminal I was working at, and her and I have never been apart. Basically, we've never been apart for the last 14 years.
That's good.
So.
We're probably going to go into another music break. I've never heard this song before in my life. Perhaps you can describe it.
All right. Well,
Bitching Camaro and the Dead Milkman.
Well, see, this is a song from me being a hot rodder and building, fast cars and working at the racetrack and a bunch of stuff I didn't get into. It's crazy how much stuff I've done in my life. But basically, I built fast cars, and I was a race car mechanic on my own race car that I was sponsored by for Performance Centers of America. And it was quite a big deal, and I raced Mustangs. And this song always made me laugh because it's a bitching Camaro. So that's basically revolves around my racing career. So it's stupid, but it's funny. So Take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Probably should have played Mustang Sally.
No, bitching Camaro's funnier to me.
Yeah.
Because at that time, I hated Camaros. So.
Right, here's the Dead Milkman and Bitchin' Camaro. Hi all, and welcome back to the final portion of tonight's An Evening with Thomas and Glenn Connon, and it was Bitchin' Camaro. Right, where did we go into next in the story of the mad world of Glenn Connon?
Oh, jeez. I didn't even mean to sound like Drake there.
That's the problem. So you became a truck driver, and
yes.
You developed road rage and found demon and dark forces trying to control your actions. And then we're going to get into some of the girlfriend stuff and your higher self. So what were the demon dark forces trying to control?
Well, so I started driving truck, and I didn't have an outlet for my anger and my rage, and we didn't touch on it before, but during those times when I was DJing and other nefarious things were going on, I was also very active in being violent towards collecting money and getting involved in fights with individuals within the organizations that didn't work well with each other, different organizations, opposing organizations and stuff. So trying to be delicate about that kind of thing, but I was quite violent. Mm. And even, it was just a lifestyle, and with knowing all the martial arts and everything, I was not a very nice person back then. And moving out here and trying to escape that and overcoming all the addictions that I had, being a truck driver made it very easy for me to continue cleaning up my life in regards to sobriety, because it forced me to not drink and to not do anything else, because you're random drug tested all the time. And it was a safety blanket for me to pull over myself and protect myself from myself. Yeah. And during that course of time, while I was trying to get happier and better, I kept encountering a lot of road rage individuals, not myself seeking them, but you drive a truck that's governed at 63 miles an hour. People tend to get upset if you try to pass another truck that's doing 61 miles an hour in the fast lane. It takes a while. And I had to keep going, do my own thing, so people would get upset and get angry and jam on their brakes in front of an 80,000-pound tractor trailer and expect me not to hit them. And it was a very trying time, and it brought me back to my martial arts and learning how to center myself and how to calm down and deal with it. But it was never an easy task, and I became more and more leaning towards violence and violent actions while behind the wheel of the tractor trailer. And it was difficult, but I made myself be the better person and try to be calm and cool and collected. It was kind of like training wheels for my awakening. And I had that accident where I was shook out of the truck, and was working at the terminal as a safety supervisor, and I met this woman, Elisa. Yeah. And long story short, we hit it off. I eventually got to the point where I could drive again, and Elisa at that point had a relapse. She has multiple sclerosis, and at that point she had a relapse with a truck that we'd given her 2 or 3 weeks prior to go out on the road. And my terminal manager says, I'm going to have to fire her if we can't find this truck. And normally the process is if you don't respond to your dispatchers and you don't respond to driver supervisor and all that stuff, and you have the truck and disappear for 2 weeks, that you're automatically fired. Yeah. And that basically you're blackballed in the trucking industry. Well, I had met Lisa prior to that, and we were hitting it off and being friendly, and we planned on driving the truck together. So at that point, I wasn't quite ready to go back out on the road, but I got my doctor to sign off, and I went down and I recovered her truck and found out that she had a relapse with MS, and she was having difficulty taking care of herself and moving around and stuff like that. So I signed on to that truck, which basically cleared her. I kind of rescued her in that situation and took responsibility for the truck myself and started driving solo and kept her with me in the truck until she was better. And then we started driving team. So we were never really apart at that point until from 2004 till 2012. We had never separated. So driving truck with her, we were in Virginia or Tennessee one night, and she, us driving together, she knows my whole life story up to this point. And we were sleeping one night, and she was trying to wake me up, and she said I was having a bad dream. And when she woke me up, she screamed, and her head hit the back of the sleeper cab. It's just a twin bed, the two of us sleeping on it. And I thought maybe I had elbowed her or something, but I realized that I was tied up in my blankets pretty good, and I couldn't have. And her nose was bloody, and the back of her head hurt. I was like, well, what's the matter? She's like, something hit me. I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, something hit me. You were having a bad dream and something hit me. And she started screaming. And I was like, what's the matter? She's like, my back. And I pulled up her shirt. And I'm watching 3 scratches go down her back. Like, they're, the red marks she would get from getting scratched. Yeah. I was watching them form down her back with welts. And the truck stunk of, like, onions and raw eggs, or, rotten eggs, like sulfur, pretty much. All of a sudden, and I was like, whatever you're doing, just stop. I will come after you. Just stop. And I remember saying that out loud, and being very angry and full of rage. I am angry and full of rage. Anyway. It's from Signs. There you go. Mel Gibson, Signs. Running around the house. I'm angered and full of rage. Anyway, so at that point, I noticed from that point on that I was less angry and I was less reactive on the road. And like a quiet awakening started happening in me about my spirituality of self, not of God or Anu or, Lucifer, any of that stuff. Yeah. And Elisa and I, we worked out what happened, and we figured that something demonic must have come out of me, or some sort of attachment must have come out of me. Yeah. And that was right around 2005. Yeah, right around 2005. And that's when I started looking on the internet for answers to what happened, and I found a couple of different groups that were helpful to me. I can't remember their names for the life of me. And I was even thinking about doing past life regression and hypnosis and all this stuff. But in the meantime, I'm getting better, and I'm waking up, and I'm starting to realize the totality of the veracity of my life at that point, and starting to reflect on things I've done, people I've hurt, people that hurt me, what led to it was just a process of self-discovery started right there. And the rest of the way has been quite amazing. And so fast forward, we bought a house in 2007. We bought a place big enough for my parents to move in because my dad was getting sicker. And that was the plan we had. And we ended up moving Elisa's family into our house, her sister and her 2 nieces, and then her son came to live with us, Elisa's son. And there was a lot of trauma and a lot of emotional pain in that house at that point in time. Yeah. So that kind of disturbed my awakening for a while and put me off track to deal with the conflict between personalities, sister versus sister, niece versus niece, and her son who had a lot of mental health issues, and rage and anxiety disorders, kind of like I was experiencing as a kid. It was just like having myself come live with us, and I really don't know how to explain it. I had it better planned out in my head how I was going to explain it, but
basically,
talk about the near deaths that
you were experiencing yourself, your whole journey all over again, and this is your version of the shadow sides, and whether you do the inner work, you can look at the shadow sides, but whether you do the inner work that follows it is down to the individual. Not everyone wants to do it,
right.
So the certain events in our life whereby the triggers come up, and this was your trigger, and this was your moment to then look back on what you felt you'd done wrong, and what had been done wrong to you, and your chance then to let go of both of them and dissolve that negative energy and the negative frequencies that are attached. Now, you obviously, you mentioned you've used drugs, and you've heavy with the alcohol, which was then adding bigger holes into the system, which then allowed other entities to come in. And I know this freaks out a lot of people, but that's the damage alcohol in excess and drugs does. It's all explained in the Unplugged, the Humanity Unplugged show 1 and 2 for people who want to listen to it. It's on Think Different. It's at thepeoplesclub.org. And we've all done things in life that we're not proud of, but it's part of you. Now, in essence, it's also a triumph. What you have to look back on is not, well, I shouldn't have done this and I shouldn't have done that. That's all addressed. What you have to go forward with is, I've overcome tragedy and pain and caused pain, and have been able to overcome it all and still say, in what is an unsane world, act in the same manner. So you've overcome so many things, and the biggest thing that you've overcome is yourself.
Right. And that's in a nutshell what happened. But the issues that happened at the house with moving the family in disrailed me and pulled me off the task of healing and finding my inner self and finding peace and calm. And I think that was, an intentional sidetrack that needed to happen in order to accelerate my desire to find inner peace and to start doing my shadow work, which at that point I didn't know what shadow work was.
Yeah.
So that whole situation basically imploded. Elisa and I went our separate ways. I ended up throwing her sister out a couple of weeks after Christmas, unfortunately, because I couldn't take what was going on. I'm not going to get into details about that. People know how family is, and that's how family is from time to time. And Elisa and I both ended up losing our jobs to medical disqualification in 2010, right around Thanksgiving. This was about 6 months before the crap hit the fan at the house with the family and everything. And I was diagnosed with a lot of medical issues that were hard to deal with. And long story short, that contributed to the disintegration of the situation in that house. So we ended up going separate ways around 2000 and it would be the end of 2011, around Christmas. I had to leave the house. and I came to where my mother's living in Binghamton here, and I helped her and my father because my father was very ill at that point in time, and he ended up passing in February 9th, exactly 6 months from my birthday, in 2011, and I was helping him with the hospice care and everything, and I was the individual that gave him his last drop of morphine, which was the beginning of my full and complete awakening, because I felt him leave his body while I was holding him, and I felt his soul getting pulled out of the house, and he was not willing to go, and he was not happy about going. Although he was looking forward to finding peace, I don't think peace came and got him. I think it was something else. And that is when I went full bore in trying to figure out what happened to my father, why was I able to feel this, and I need to get control of whatever has been controlling me.
Yeah. And
that began the path of self-discovery, and that's shortly thereafter is when I found the show with Drake and Wilcock.
Yeah. As a side note, I know you're involved in dogs, and we'll talk a bit more about that soon. But at which point in your life, how long ago did the dogs come into your life?
The dogs have always been a part of my life. Golden Retrievers became part of my life, I guess, right around 2000 that would be 1998. I bought a Golden Retriever puppy for another woman I was dating, and it was both when we were addicted and using, and she was not able to take care of the dog, and she gave it away to an individual that further neglected the animal. And I went to get it from that person's house and recovered her. And she was loaded with ticks and had cuts and scrapes all over her body and had been trying to escape the fence she was in. And I basically took that dog back, and she was my best friend and my father's best friend for the rest of her life, which was 13 years. And the other dogs happened to come along around 2010 after we were disqualified from driving.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if we're going to be disqualified from driving, then our dream's coming true sooner because we're going to breed dogs. So,
and you do realize that they came to help you.
Yes. Amber, my
That's
first
the point I was
retriever,
trying to make.
Yeah, she saved my life. I lived for her. And, I said I wanted to live for my father, I wanted to live mother and all that stuff, but when it comes down to it, in regards to the dogs, I didn't want to leave her.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So, you kind of, to change the subject a bit, things are a bit easier. You jumped into the never-ending rabbit hole called the alternative media.
Yes, I did.
How did it make you feel then, and how does it make you feel now?
Back then, it made me feel confused, anxious, and basically wondering what was truth, what was BS, and why David Wilcock looked like a little girly boy. No, that's terrible. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. There was a lot of opposing beliefs and opposing ideas, and there was a lot of ideas that seemed good to me, and I was really lost. I come from a family of people that can sense things and have a monicum of ESP, and I started to talk to my sister and some of my friends that were aware of that, and they taught me to understand my inner guidance and to trust myself and know myself, and that process started, and it was like another doorway that opened up, but this one wasn't scary. And the longer I worked at trying to understand consciousness and trying to understand the point of existence, I would continually come back to myself and ask myself these questions. And I remember hearing the show with Drake and Wilcock, and I went down that rabbit hole. And I had already been listening to the Ancient Alien shows and X-Files my whole life, and I couldn't get enough of Ancient Aliens, because I was like, that's my truth. That's what they're hiding from us. And I knew it. And this is the problem with the world, that nobody realizes this is the truth. And I would research more and more of that on the internet. And I became very educated about it. And then I discovered you on Drake's show. And I liked what you were saying, and I understood what you were saying, and you didn't speak in circles and going backwards and reverse and drifting down the course of knowledge. And met some of the people that were really awesome on CV and talked with a lot of them, and they helped me to a degree. And then when Truth, Honor, Integrity came together, that's pretty much when my consciousness started coming together, and starting to know my inner self and higher self, and the work Chloe's done with the shadow work and all the documents that she's put out. And I remember the first time that I was actually meditated and had an astral projection, and I typed on the page about my experience, and that when I was coming out of the experience, that I was having trouble coming back into my body. And then when I finally did come back into my body, I saw all these gray, wispy things around my house for hours afterwards. Like people living right next to me that were not aware of us living next to them until they were aware that I was aware. Yeah. And that was a very trippy experience. And Chloe helped me with that, and the information that you guys put out helped me with that. And I remember talking to her, and she was a very calming, relaxing influence. And I can't believe how much I'm affected by talking about all this stuff. I'm getting really emotional.
No, it's good because, like I say, these shows are about emptying out the baggage. You've gone through a whole heap of your own lifestyle and your baggage that you've dealt with to a certain degree. Maybe today you've dealt with it permanently. Once you come off this show and think, oh my God, I've said all this and I've said all that, I'm letting it go now. It's gone. It doesn't have to become an emotional attachment anymore. It doesn't have to become an emotional trauma anymore. It's gone, and this is why we do these shows, because everyone has similar stories, different traumas and different abuses and whatnot, and experiences, and they've held on to them and held on to them and held on to them. Well, there's nothing more liberating than coming on, being amongst friends, and basically THI has become a family, and unloading it and letting it go. And that's the essence of THI, regardless of all the intel and the Q&A and the op-ed pieces and this and that. The essence is getting people to be themselves. Because for too long we've wore not only the mask of illusion, the same as everybody else, but too long we've wore the voice of silence. Everything is in it, where we're frightened to speak, and if you did, you got the rolled eyes or the ridicule. That has to stop, and the only way to do that is to speak it.
Yeah.
And that you've done. Warts and all, it doesn't matter. None of us have been angels all our lives. You know, there's no one on the planet that's been all good. It's not possible. It's all about the balance. And what you've done is you've taken a very poor situation, both in terms of lifestyle, in terms of what your actions, recognised them, and turned it all around. And I've gone from harming to helping, and that's the micro to the macro. We're trying to get the cabal to step down and not harm, but come and help us, because we're all in it together at the end of the day.
Yes.
And this is the key aspect of it. So you kind of discovered your higher self, and that has obviously takes a bit of getting used to, because sometimes it talks through you. Is that something that you...
No, for me, Thomas, it was like coming home.
Yeah.
It was the hole that I tried to fill with material things, with pride, with ego, with money, girls. That's the hole that I've been trying to plug inside of me, is coming home to my higher self. And since that first shaky experience when I saw those little gray things floating around my house, coming back into my body, it has been a wonderful journey ever since. And I've helped tons of people around me. I've trying to work things out with Lisa and I. We're back together, trying to help Mom get her house sold so we can all go our separate ways. But in the meantime, I'm trying to help my mom let go of a lot of the same issues I had ingrained in me with she's on the dark side of the force, my friend. But you know, she had it ingrained in her from youth, and anyway, so I'm trying to help all of them move through all this stuff. And every day I'm discovering more and more joy in my own being. And that's thanks to everybody on this journey with us through THI, Cosmic Voice, even David Wilcock.
Heaven forbid.
It's all been it's all been an important part of my journey. And in saying that, the last 2 years, I have developed amazing skills and abilities in the Dreamtime, and even more amazing interpersonal skills and abilities to heal people in my immediate family and immediate friends from their hurt and their trauma, and help them move on and let go and do the shadow work. And I enjoy interacting with everybody on the page, and I seem to be able to help those in need emotionally, or just be a comforting voice. And that's something that I enjoy doing very much, and I feel it's one of my callings is to help people discover themselves and heal themselves, and to be a teacher to teach yourself, basically.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So and that it's been a fantastic journey. And I mean, some of the stuff that happens in Dreamtime now, but looking back on all the experiences that I've had and all those night terrors, and I look at all of that as training for what I do but do not remember in the Dreamtime. I mean, I wake up and I was like, I can't believe all that happened. I get out of bed and I was like, what happened? you know.
The old memory
So
wipes.
I'm still trying. I'm still trying to negotiate with higher self about letting me remember who I am and where I come from. But the joy of feeling my higher self move through me and speak through me to people in the group or people in my life that give advice and love and just be there to listen is the hole that I was trying to fill the whole time.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
I don't know. Sounds goofy.
No, it's not. It's absolutely spot on, and it's a triumph over tragedy. And we've all, you've opened all the doors. You used to close the doors, now you're opening them, and that's the big change on that level. But some of the with regards to the things of remembering, once you go out, time ceases to play out the way it does in the waking time, and you could be gone hundreds of years during one night's sleep. How are you going to remember all that on top of the memory you already have? The problem is the brain only has so much RAM, and some have got more RAM than others, but the brain only has so much RAM. Well, you can't include when you are multi-dimensional, so you are operating in many different planes at the same time. You can't all centralize the one memory, and that's why when you have to go out and you have to play the other role of you, is sometimes it has to stay there. There's times when I remember certain meetings that go on, but I don't come back with the knowledge of it. I know I went there and I know I came out, but the knowledge that's in there, maybe it has to stay on that plane, because if it comes into the waking, then it can be manipulated and used against you. So there might be plans going on to fix, let's just say, deal with a certain underground bunker. Well, if I come back with that memory of what's going on, and somebody then tunes into my frequency, they're going to download everything, and there's the plan gone. So there's elements of that. There's elements of that of non-memory also.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, I don't know. There's tons of crap that happened, but that I think that unbelievable story I just told is good enough, and we can leave it at that. So, I don't know. It talking about it is. I don't think I've ever told that whole story in one clip.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's
before.
your
So,
that's your release.
A lot left out, but we hit all.
And it's important after the show that you take time to process it and let go of some of the bits that still stick. You'll know which ones they are, and
yes,
and then you go forward with a much cleaner vessel than you had so many years ago, and that's basically what we're all doing, is cleaning out the traumas, cleaning out the guilt, cleaning out the shame. We've all done things, like I said, that we regret in life. We've hurt people, but whether it be deliberately or inadvertently, it doesn't make any difference to the person that you hurt. And it's been an extraordinary journey, and I'm glad you came on and enlightened us all with it. And I wish you every success going forward. I think you have found your calling, and it's up to you how far you want to go with it. There are things coming up that will enhance everybody's hopes and dreams going forward, and where the overall aspect of the foundation and releasing the funds is about helping each other. It's not about the money trappings. You've heard what happened to Glenn when he had money trappings, and how it all quickly goes badly, and luckily that he's still here. So I think you're going to get opportunities that will come to you going forward, where you can really fulfill your destiny of helping people and moving on. Of course, as you're helping people,
wonderful.
You're also helping yourself. That's why Chloe does all those documents. In essence, it's helping her as well. Because we all have our latent issues to deal with. Chloe's trying to get me over one of mine, which is I'm too nice. She's,
too nice.
I have to be tougher with people, but people make mistakes. There's members in the group who've been booted 4 or 5 times, and you let them back in, and you let themselves down again. I'm not responsible for their behaviour; they're responsible for their own. But we all have bad days, but some people do tend to play on that tolerance level, and she says, you've got to be a bit more tougher. So, but I'd sooner be too nice than too nasty. So it's finding a balance, I suppose, at the end of the day.
Yes. Well, I stopped posting all those pictures about my puppies, so there you go. I did right.
Well, as long as it wasn't cats, to me.
Yes, no, I won't.
You didn't get into that program.
I'm very sorry. Yes, I have much the same feeling.
Yeah.
Anything that poops in a box and walks on my countertop. But
I always remember when I was really young, my granddad, and of course they used to have really giant pans then, of about a foot deep, making soup. It used to be the way back then, and me nan had a cat, and the cat went along the counter and was at its head in the soup bowl. It was just licking up the top. So my granddad come in, and I'd just come out of the yard. I was playing soccer in the yard, and bloody cat. And he got hold of the cat's head, and in it went into the soup. He wants soup. Have some soup. And people go, oh, that's really cruel. Well, it shouldn't have been eaten at dinner, That was my first memory of cats. My granddad, he didn't particularly like that cat either. Perhaps it runs in
Sorry
families.
to all you cat lovers.
Yeah, Thomas is cruel to cats. We've got him on something. Right.
Oh, no.
Well, I want to thank you again for coming on, and I wish you well on your journey. I think we'll be working together somewhere along the way. And what I would like you to do is, given this final song you picked is one that Drake used to pick quite often, Buffalo Springfield. I'd like you to introduce it in Drake and say goodnight.
Hell, yes, I got through all the intel and told you about the guns and keep your guns close and oiled. There's something outside my door, and they're coming for me. They're coming for me. They're coming to get me in the blue ball. Anyway, I think we've had enough for tonight, folks. And, look, there's deer outside my yard. I wish I had you on speaker. On the video, you could see them. Look, can you see them out the yard? I guess not. Anyway, I'm looking out the window, seeing what's going around, and I want you to keep your head on a swivel, watch your six, and everybody watch what's coming round. This is Buffalo Springfield. I love you, THI.
Thank you, Glenn Connon, and thank you, Minnie Drake. This has been an evening with Thomas.